This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. And tonight, Washington had a chance to end the federal shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security. And instead, Republicans blocked their own deal. We're going to break down how that happened, who's now at odds inside of the GOP, and what it means as this disruption drags on at airports across the United States. And then the ripple effects of the Iran conflict continue to be felt on the home front. We're going to talk about that and connect the dots on what's coming next. We'll also be bringing in Iowa Democratic Senate candidate Zack Walls to talk about what this looks like on the ground and the critical midterm elections in this country hanging over all of these controversies. And then later, at the end of the program, you're going to want to stick around because we have a new segment. And that segment is where we will award the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award. Soulmate in air quotes, because we're going to be giving away a pair of shoes, the same shoes that the President of the United States likes to give away to his supplicants. Stay tuned to find out who wins our Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award, the inaugural one that we have given out. This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. Let's start in Washington. The Department of Homeland Security has now been partially shut down for weeks, since Valentine's Day, in fact. Overnight, the U.S. Senate passed a deal to reopen it, a deal that Americans have been begging for. It had bipartisan support and would fund most of DHS through the end of this year, including TSA, disaster response at FEMA, the United States Coast Guard, but crucially, it left out any additional funding for ICE and CBP. By this afternoon, House Republicans, who were supposed to consider the deal, many expected them to pass it, well, they rejected that deal.
This gambit that was done last night is a joke. I'm quite convinced that it can't be that every Senate Republican read the language of this bill, and I'm going to just read you one excerpt of it because it's pretty alarming, and it says everything that you need to know in Section 4. This is on page 2 of the bill. This is an actual copy of the bill. That excerpt. It says, quote, "The contents printed under the headings of this bill, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Security Operations, under the heading of U.S. Customs and Border Patrol and Protection, shall have no force or effect for purposes of this act, and amounts specified in the final bill under the subheading Border Security Operations and under the heading U.S. Customs and Border Protection and under the headings of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in the Department of Homeland Security shall be zero."
Well, I guess no one briefed Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, that was the deal, that ICE and CBP, which had been given billions of dollars last summer, have the ability to spend that money when other agencies at DHS don't. So yes, the deal that was struck was we don't need to give any more money to ICE and CBP because they are flush with billions. I know that. I'm surprised that the Speaker of the House is surprised by that. He says it's a joke. And let's be clear here. Speaker Mike Johnson is not just shutting down the Democrats. He's rejecting the Republicans in the Senate who reached this agreement. They negotiated that deal. They passed it. They even had gone to the White House earlier this week and had conversations with the president about it. Then many of them flew out of town. Now the U.S. House of Representatives is sending back a plan that Senate leaders are already calling dead on arrival. Even Senate Republicans are saying the fastest way out is for the House just to pass what has already been approved. So now this is a standoff between Republicans and Republicans, not the White House and Democrats, not Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats. This is GOP on GOP violence, and it doesn't stop there. Inside the House, Speaker Johnson is facing pushback from his own members. Behind closed doors, Republicans raised, quote, tremendous concerns about his plan. One asked, quote, "Who thinks the Senate is going to pass this?" Another warned, "We are going to suffer the blame." That's because, of course, House Republican solution is just to say, we're going to fund the whole Department of Homeland Security. We're going to fund ICE and CBP when they are already flush with cash. His own Republicans know that's not going to work. We're going to be the ones that said no. And we and the president are going to take the blame for the airports being shut down. Because the alternative is because the alternative Johnson is pushing does not resolve this shutdown. It basically starts it all over again. A short-term patch that risks putting them right back in the same place in a matter of weeks. That sort of extension is what got us into this mess in the first place. Extension after extension, short-term extensions allow for more shutdowns and more shutdowns and more shutdowns. That's the situation the American people want to get out of. And yet, here we are. The shutdown continues. And the people the GOP claims to support are left feeling the burn all around this country. To start, TSA agents are now resorting to extreme measures to pay their bills. Here is acting TSA Administrator Ha McNeil testifying in front of the House earlier this week.
This fiscal year, TSA has been shut down for 50% of the time, or 85 days. And if still shut down this Friday, we will have reached nearly $1 billion in missed paychecks. This level of disruption is unprecedented and unacceptable and significantly undermines the security of U.S. transportation systems. 95%, or more than 61,000 of TSA's employees must continue working without pay during a shutdown. Many in our workforce have missed bill payments, received eviction notices, had their cars repossessed and utilities shut off, lost their childcare, defaulted on loans, damaged their credit line, and drained their retirement savings. Some are sleeping in their cars, selling their blood and plasma, and taking on second jobs to make ends meet, all while being expected to perform at the highest level when in uniform to protect the traveling public. A transportation security officer at Reagan National Airport recently said, "I just want Congress to pay me for the job I am doing." We have already lost over 480 TSOs this shutdown, and our call-out rates have accelerated as our workforce was still reeling from the last shutdown.
I know Ha McNeil. I've worked with her in the past. She's a lifelong civil servant who means well. I believe what she is saying about TSA. And it's clear that the pressure is mounting inside of that agency on all of those employees. And it's not just there. Apparently, the pressure is mounting on others too, because there's breaking news that shows the acting head of ICE has been hospitalized twice in recent months as, again, he has been under increasing pressure from the White House to carry out an aggressive immigration agenda. Raises a bigger question here in this moment, because Democrats have been holding the line on funding, raising concerns about how ICE is operating and pushing for changes in enforcement. And now new reporting is raising questions about exactly what that might be doing to the leaders inside of that agency. Of course, instead of resolving those concerns, Trump would rather play hero, even if it's just pretend. In fact, today, Trump signed an executive order saying he would pay TSA workers. Now, you wouldn't be blamed for thinking, well, that's a good thing. The president has a way to pay TSA workers first. Why didn't he do that weeks ago? But here's what it actually means. He cannot reopen DHS on his own. He cannot pass a funding bill. Only Congress can do that. So this order does not end the shutdown. It means Donald Trump will have to shift money behind the scenes to pay TSA workers, something that, again, he apparently could have done from the start and will no doubt result in additional legal challenges because here's the thing. Donald Trump probably doesn't have the legal authority to do that. So he's got a temporary fix, a Band-Aid to this problem, a Band-Aid that in and of itself might be illegal. And meanwhile, House Republicans have followed his lead by rejecting an eminently reasonable deal. I'm going to bring Xander Schultz, my Defiance.org co-founder, into the conversation. Xander, it's going to be a real hard time for all these pundits who go on TV to call this a Democratic shutdown. There's about 100 ways this week that Trump and Republicans have decided to just own this thing.
There's so much good news in this bad news. It's weird to say, but I think our orientation is generally how do we make the most out of this? The Republican infighting is great. Mike Johnson can reach the MAGA audience better than you and I ever could. The senators that disagree with Mike Johnson can reach the MAGA audience better than you or I ever could. And so the breaking apart of this faction through the infighting is good news. Also, and I hate to relish in short-term pain, but feeling the pain of incompetent leadership as you do at an airport is a good thing. It has kind of a relatively minimal, terrible impact on people. And it is great for people to experience incompetency so they can look at leadership, question what's going on for those who aren't constantly plugged in politically, and start to look for alternatives to this administration. And so in some ways, we've talked about this a lot. Short-term pain is a good thing for this country to experience, especially everyday people who might not be plugged in, might not be worried about authoritarianism. It's much better to have acute short-term pain than be the frog in the pot that slowly boils and never knows it's in trouble. And I think when the Trump administration, Trump 2 started, I was worried about us being that frog, and they're making all of the mistakes to kind of avoid that outcome for us.
Yeah, well, although I will say, that short-term wake-up call would be a lot better if it wasn't putting people out of work, if it wasn't taking stressed out, financially strapped TSA agents and making them consider, can I go another week without pay, or do I need to go quit and drive Uber? I mean, that's the honest thing that's happening here. And it's sickening to see this administration, create those circumstances. I'll tell you, Donald Trump does not care. The 35-day shutdown that I was a part of in 2018 to 2019, I'll tell you how that one played out. It played out with us going to the White House, trying to figure out who was in charge, because the president had basically taken off for the holiday. And it wasn't clear if the vice president, Mike Pence, or Jared Kushner, wasn't clear who was leading the negotiations with Capitol Hill to end a shutdown that the president started. And as Coast Guard employees and TSA agents started missing paychecks and worrying about how they would survive, we were going to meet with the president and saying, people are going to suffer. People are not going to be able to buy food for their families. Our employees are going to food lines. And you know what?
Yeah.
Donald Trump didn't care. That's not what put him over the edge. What put him over the edge was Republicans told him he wasn't going to get money for his border wall. And he was upset about that. Was not upset about the TSA agents who couldn't feed themselves. Wasn't upset about the coasties who might need food bank support. Instead, he was upset about his border wall. And clearly, the administration is doing everything it can to prolong this shutdown.
I'm happy you used the word suffer, because I think it was indicative. I forget the Republican you quoted, but they said, we are going to suffer the blame. It lets you know how they're thinking about this. They aren't thinking about that TSA agent, to the point you just made. They're thinking about, how will we suffer because of how the optics of this look, versus we are causing suffering. Let's find a way to stop causing suffering. It was such a gross DC response, and it is a window into the math these guys are always doing, which is me. How is my team doing? How am I going to benefit from the situation? How can I spin it in my favor? And not, what is the impact of the behaviors and decisions we are making, and how do I make sure that everyday Americans are benefiting most from the way we are operating and managing this country?
Of course, my friend. Well, while Washington is stuck in this stalemate, this fight, Xander, is spilling out into the Republican base. This and a number of other controversies that the Trump administration has generated. And nowhere is that clearer than CPAC this weekend, the Conservative Political Action Conference. This is supposed to be the heart of Donald Trump's coalition. But right now, the people gathering at CPAC are torn apart on controversy after controversy. Some of them are debating whether they're Turning Point fans or fans of Nick Fuentes. There's a cultural split inside of MAGA between extremes and far extremes, but it's also other issues. The shutdown that Donald Trump has fomented, and issues like the war in Iran. CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan is on the ground capturing that split. Take a look.
This is not a war. This is not an award. Oh my God, I absolutely support the President of the United States of America.
I'm at CPAC in Dallas. It's the biggest conservative conference in the country. And lots of people here are talking about the war in Iran. Trump is not speaking at this event this year, but in the past when he has spoken here, he's talked a lot about not starting new wars. When it comes to Iran, how do you feel about that?
I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. I mean, President Trump ran on no new wars. I feel like we've been opted into a war that shouldn't be ours. It should be Israel's.
We want to say, Mr. President, thank you. Thank you for helping Iranian people.
What do you think of the war with Iran at the moment?
Unfortunately, I think it's necessary.
You do?
Yes, and he's the only president that had the backbone to take it on.
Do you believe that Israel forced the U.S. into this war?
Absolutely not. Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants to do.
I don't think Trump is really controlled by anybody, as much as everyone would like to control him. But I do question some of the things when it comes to, are we just going to bend over everything for Israel, you know?
What do you say to some Republican people who say, well, this is Israel's war, it shouldn't be America's war?
That's not so. Israel is God's people. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel, they better watch out.
Do you feel disappointed in the president?
Sure.
Do you still support him?
I want him to succeed. I certainly do. I think it's to be determined on, if I can remain to support him. We'll see how the next 6 months.
That divide you're seeing there is not noise. That is a warning sign for Donald Trump. It's a warning sign that in the core of his base, people are pissed off about this war that he launched, that he said he would never launch. And they are still seeing the consequences, which are only just beginning from that conflict. And it's not just at the oil pump. We're starting to see the cybersecurity consequences, the earliest innings, I would predict, of those cybersecurity consequences. And in breaking news today, Iran-linked hackers have now breached the personal email of FBI Director Kash Patel, releasing photos and private messages online. Now, officials were quick to say that no classified material was exposed outside of photos of Kash living it up and smelling fine cigars and riding in high-priced antique cars and holding a bottle of rum in a mirror. However, this is about pressure. They're showing that the Iranians are showing that they can reach into the highest levels of U.S. leadership and create effects. It's a warning sign. It's meant to say, we can reach out and touch you, and we can do worse. That's exactly what happens in these situations of conflict. They are signaling we can go after big targets, and we can go after even bigger targets. Iran is now also tightening control over one of the most important shipping lanes in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. They've effectively turned it into a toll system. Ships are being vetted. Some are being forced to pay the Iranians for passage, and others are just being kept back. Now, this isn't a normal transit fee. Iran is deciding which ships get to move and which don't. Some vessels are paying literally millions of dollars just to get through, and others, of course, U.S.-linked ships, are being blocked or forced to reroute a very long and circuitous route to get to their final destinations. We've already seen this choke point hit the gas pump, but the next impact is more serious, and that's on food. Because what's just getting trapped in that same corridor is not oil, it's fertilizer. Nearly 1/3 of the world's fertilizer moves through the Strait of Hormuz, and now those shipments are delayed, rerouted, or not moving at all. Well, you might think there's got to be other places for fertilizer. This is a huge passageway, and prices are already climbing because of it. Food prices are up across the board. Ammonia, for instance, is up 20%. Urea is up 50% in just a matter of weeks, and that is going to have downstream impacts. And when those fertilizer prices spike, farmers don't have many options. They either plant less or they pay more. And either way, that cost gets passed to you right down the line. This is hitting just as U.S. farmers head into planting season, which means the effects are not theoretical. They're not months away. It is now. They are already moving through the system, from global shipping lanes to American farms and straight to the grocery stores that you shop at. It's no longer a foreign policy story. It's a farming story. It's an affordability story. Yet one more. I'm going to bring Xander into the conversation here to talk through this. Xander, we've been saying for weeks, we've been saying since the day after the war started, this would result in compounding economic effects that the White House should have realized. You can equate this now to another massive tax being placed on the American people. We're going to call it Trump's war tax because that's what it is. The price of oil is going up. The price of gasoline, that means everything that has to move on wheels is going to get more expensive because that's going to get passed to the consumer. Then you talk about the fertilizer getting held up and affecting food prices. You're going to have food that farmers grow that's going to be marked up because it's more expensive to transport. It's more expensive to plant. It might be subject to tariffs in different places because of this president. It's like he's taken every step by design to make life more expensive for people because he has no relation to the average man or woman.
Totally. And this is timed with the largest cut to the SNAP program in history. We just cut let me make sure I'm reading the right data here, $186 billion through 2034 in food assistance. We just did that through the big, beautiful bill or whatever. We should call it something else. I don't have a nickname for it yet, but I hate calling it that. There's work requirements that are expanded to qualify for it. There's over 1 million older adults, 55 to 64, projected to lose their benefits on this. So not only is there an affordability crisis going on, you got to remember these guys just took away food benefits for millions of Americans that need it now more than ever.
Yeah, I think that's so jarring. It's hard to even capture the compounding effects here, and I think that the tension is showing. I mean, there was some reporting this week that Trump was telling advisors the war is going to end by week 6, and he's going to try to be in that 4 to 6 week timeline. I think he's getting nervous. Even Donald Trump cannot ignore all the warning signs. The guy sits there and he watches TV all day. And when his surrogates are not able to go out there and explain away the price increases, the chaos, the additional threats to Americans, he starts to sweat, and he should be sweating. Again, all of it foreseeable. Anyone who knows a damn thing about international relations, international economics, could have sat in a room with him and said, this will not go well if you go into a major conflict with the Iranians. It's going to potentially lead to global recession. It's going to increase security threats to Americans. But the president barreled forward with war. And by all accounts, his advisors were scared to tell him about the consequences. Now, here we are, and it sounds like Donald Trump is getting nervous behind the scenes, and he's rapidly sending ground troops to the region. I don't think he immediately intends to deploy them. I think he's intending to get leverage. He's trying to scare the Iranians that he's going to do a ground invasion, but he desperately doesn't want to do it. He desperately wants to end his own war that he started because he's scared of the mess that he's created, Xander.
Yeah. And you know what, Miles, there's unlike some of his messes, I don't know how he unwinds this before the midterms too. That's the thing. It's there's he's trying to threaten Jerome Powell and drive down interest rates. There's no real way for him to unwind this. We've seen him in the past do something really dumb. I think about the tariffs and the impact it had on the farmers. And he said, fine, you lost this much money. I'll give you half that, but I'll give it to you directly. And you'll maybe give me some credit for being a good guy and giving farmers some money. You can't do that with all Americans across the country with an affordability crisis this large. And so there's no real good way for him to kind of put, I don't know what fell out of Pandora's box when it goes in. I'm forgetting that saying. Close Pandora's box.
It wasn't fertilizer, because if it was, we wouldn't be in this situation. Look, there's someone that we're going to bring onto the program today to talk about this. He could not be in a better place for this conversation, but a worse place in terms of how Americans might be experiencing this. We have Zack Walls with us. He is running for the United States Senate in the Democratic primary in Iowa, a crucial battleground state in this country, and also a crucial state for American farming. Zack Walls, welcome to the program, my friend. Thank you for joining Defiance Daily.
Hey, it's good to be with you all. Sorry I'm running just a few minutes late here. It's a busy day here in the Hawkeye State.
You're
A lot of
running for
folks are
Senate. You're running for Senate, Zach. You get a pass.
fair enough. I would say running for the U.S. Senate with a 2-year-old, certainly not for the faint of heart. But thankfully,
oh man, these two guys know. Guys with beards with little kids is a club that we're going to start after this.
We're especially matchy today. Once Zach,
I know.
Me and Zach are really playing it close.
Well, and then, so it's
right.
Obviously Iowans are still celebrating last night's big win over Nebraska, and very excited about the game coming up here tomorrow against Illinois.
Is it Elite Eight or Final Four time?
Elite Eight. It's first Elite Eight game that we played in since 1987.
Nice.
I feel real
awesome.
Weird not wearing a hat. I was going to put on a Defiance hat.
I'll ask Zach first.
I do have a green hat like you guys do, so let's kind of match.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, Xander, Xander. Sorry, I want to take moderator's prerogative really quick. Zach, just to ask you a first question. What are you hearing about this on the campaign trail? Because look, gas prices being up. Clearly, you're hearing that every day from people. But the fact that we're now seeing potential catastrophic effects on fertilizer at the beginning of growing season, I don't think folks realize this is a very scary situation for this country to be in, especially the people of Iowa.
So I would tell you two things. So it's March 27th. So most Iowa farmers have already purchased the fertilizer that they're going to use for this planting season. Probably 75, 80% at this point, which is good because, to your point, Miles, cost of fertilizer up 40% year over year compared to last year. However, if this conflict is not resolved, these prices stay at this elevated level. A lot of folks will start to purchase or kind of hedge their fertilizer costs later this year. That's often in September, October, November. And so it is totally possible that the real crunch that we are seeing right now could very well play out when we're coming down into the final days and weeks before the election. But in addition to all of that, virtually every piece of farm equipment runs on diesel. We obviously know the increased fuel prices are going to be biting a lot of folks all over our state, all over the country. And so we definitely are hearing a lot about what's happening. Look, there's also the human cost of this conflict. 2 of the first 6 military fatalities from this war were Iowans, Major Jeffrey O'Brien from Waukee and Sergeant Declan Cody from the West Des Moines area. And the unit that was attacked in Kuwait was a Iowa-based unit, which is why Major O'Brien and Sergeant Cody were there. And so it's not just the economic cost, but the human cost as well. And that's something that I think we're hearing about from a lot of folks.
Zach, in some ways, it doesn't surprise me to hear about those problems and how those are issues for people. But I think one reason you're such an important candidate and leader in this moment, I think the Democratic Party has for too long listened to donor bases on the coast, New York City, Los Angeles, and we've set our priorities and solutions based on what those donors and corporations wanted. What solutions, when you talk about solutions to these issues, what solutions do you see Iowans gravitating towards that has surprised you or you feel like you've learned a lot through those conversations?
Xander, I really appreciate the question. It's kind of ironic. I just grabbed this hat because it was available as I was leaving the house this morning. But ANF, the logo here, was what Hayden Fry, legendary coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes, put on the helmets of our football team during the farm crisis in the 1980s. And it was just a reminder that America needs farmers. And we were really dealing with crisis level at that time due to a multitude of factors. But really going back to the 80s and the farm crisis, Iowa has been a state that has really tended to vote or gravitate towards elected candidates and officials who were willing to challenge the establishment because the establishment failed our state so badly during that moment of economic calamity for Iowa. And so that's why you see Bill Clinton winning Iowa in the 90s, Barack Obama winning Iowa in the 2000s, and of course, anti-establishmentarianism personified in Donald J. Trump over the last 3 presidential election cycles. And so even though those 3 different candidates have quite a few different, differences among them, that has been a through line among the folks who Iowa has voted for the presidential level, at least. And what I would tell you, Xander, is that when you look at what is happening in our economy right now, with this cost crisis that we are dealing with. Now, it's obviously driven by a multitude of factors, whether it's the tariffs, it's conflict with Iran, but a big part of it is being driven by consolidation that we have seen in our economy with mergers and acquisitions leading to bigger and bigger corporations, monopolies. And if you just, Econ 101, the less competition you have, the higher prices you get. That's not good for workers. It's not good for consumers. It's great for profit margins. It's bad for everybody else. And so when you think about what are concrete solutions to the problems that we are facing right now, a real big piece of that has to be the courage to, challenge these corporate monopolies, to talk candidly about the massive inequality that we see in this country when it comes to wealth and income, and the fact that there are a handful of billionaires and big corporations that are doing better than ever, while everyday Iowa families are struggling harder than ever to get by. And I will tell you, these examples, they range from what's happening in our ag economy to what's happening in healthcare, what's happening. If you look at a map of Iowa, right, and you put a little dot in every community across our state that has lost a small town or rural pharmacy over the last 5 years, the entire state lights up. And the reason that's the case is because we have these pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, that have put the squeeze on small town and rural pharmacies all over our state and frankly all over the country. One of the most wild examples that we heard recently, we were down in southwest Iowa, so Cass County over here in the southwest part of the state, meeting with community leaders there. And one of the things that came up in the course of that conversation was the fact that the price for a new fire engine has tripled in the last decade. Now, if you had told me gone up 40% or 50%, I would have said, yeah, it sounds about right. But tripling in a decade, I mean, that is enormous. And fire trucks are not an optional expense if you're, a community, local government. So I got home to Coralville, which is where I live, our campaign HQ here. And I called up our city manager to say, hey, is this going on here in Coralville too? And he said, absolutely. Turns out it's happening all over the country. And the reason that's the case is because a single private equity company has rolled up 40% of the manufacturing space here for fire trucks and other specialty vehicles. And so, consumers, or households that pay property taxes, it's our property tax dollars that are padding the profit margins for this one company that is fleecing people all over the United States. And I just saw the other day that they just announced another big merger, so it's going to get even worse. And so when I think about how we build an economy that works for us, it has to mean challenging the consolidation that we've seen in the economy across an entire, variety of different industries.
Zack, I got to say, you're in a hell of a race right now. This is going to be a very competitive state. Tell me why Democrats think, regardless of whether it's you or your primary competitor in this race who ends up being the Democratic nominee, why do Democrats see Iowa as in play this cycle?
Yeah, a lot of reasons, Miles. So, number one, I would just point to the last 12 months. So we have had 6 different special elections for our state legislature all over the state. In all 6 of those special elections over the last 14 months, Democrats have put up double-digit overperformances relative to 2024. We flipped one state Senate seat over here in Clinton County. So this is the eastern part of the state. And if Democratic ancestral homeland is along the Mississippi River. So if you look at where all those Obama-Trump counties are, the vast majority of them up and down the Mississippi.
Zack, I think you're going to need to update the campaign sign so it's got rivers in it. We need to be able to see the county detail. I would like to see the topographic detail in there. Yeah, like if I could get more of a sense of Iowa in there, I would love that.
I will tell you this. I'm an Eagle Scout. I grew up in the Boy Scouts, and so I love me a good map. And I'll have to talk to the team about getting one that I can use as a prop.
Zack, I am not your campaign manager, but if you just had a map that you could pull out, and you're like, this is the great state of Iowa, and it unfurls so big, and you've got it.
So I'm not kidding. There's actually, I can see literally in the office right through the window here, we've got like the DOT map with all the highways and the county lines and stuff. But we have not deployed one yet for the step and repeat behind us.
Well, sorry. So Zack, I disrupted your flow, and look, I see why you're doing so well in this race. People see you're a real person. You're not a robot. Yeah. You're not a politician trained to talking points. You're real. You get it. You talk how people want to hear their politicians talk. And you're explaining to us why people see Iowa as so important. And y'all are a battleground in this election with enormous national consequences.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I try not to think about this too hard late at night, when I'm trying to fall asleep, but it is not lost on me that there is a very real chance that this is seat 51 in a Democratic majority, and one of our last best chances to put a real check on this administration during the final 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency. But when you look at the election results that we've seen, these special elections that I was gesturing it on the map here, right? I feel like Vanna White a little bit. We've flipped multiple seats. We've had these massive overperformances. The most recent special election that we had, this is in the West Des Moines area, so kind of a suburban area. We had a 27-point overperformance relative to 2024. That was in a West Des Moines state Senate seat. Now, guys, I'm not here trying to tell you that we're going to have a 27-point overperformance this November. But what I can tell you is that those results reflect the growing gap in enthusiasm among Democratic base voters and the MAGA base voters. And when we think about the coalition that we are trying to build to win this election in November, it is all about building a coalition that includes not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans who can see what is happening in our state, what is happening in our country, and are ready to make a change. And we have a message. You've already heard me talk about the economy. Another thing that we talk about all the time is the corruption that we see in Washington, D.C. And we're candid with people. That corruption has been a problem with people from both parties for far too long. But, as a Democrat, someone who believes that government can do good things to make people's lives better, whether that's Social Security, whether that's Medicare, whether that's the, interstate highway system, and so many more things, we have a special responsibility, I think, to ensure that people can actually trust their government, can believe that the people representing us actually represent us and work for us, not just the corporate donors, not just their own bank accounts. That's why we always talk about things like overturning Citizens United. I've become a very strong believer in term limits. I've served now as my second term in the Iowa State Senate. And it's not something that I really cared all that much about when I was first elected, but having now served 8 years, I see what happens when good people stay for too long. And it is so much worse when bad people stay for too long. And so in this state, I always say, we know that rotating the crops is good for our soil. You better believe it's good for the United States Senate as well. And the last thing, I've made a promise. I mentioned I grew up in the Scouts. I was taught leadership starts by example. And so I made a promise if elected to the U.S. Senate, I will not own, trade, sell any stocks, any cryptocurrencies. You want to own an index fund or a government bond from the U.S. Treasury, that's fine with me. But it always makes my stomach turn when I read these stories. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. People who are getting rich, they're supposed to be working for taxpayers. That's not right. And that's not how, as a party, we can allow that to continue if we want to rebuild that trust in government so we can do good things to make people's lives better.
I'm so happy you mentioned that. I've been talking about this a lot recently, and it leads well to my next question, which is the association with the Democratic Party probably hurts as much as it helps these days. The party's not popular. Leadership's not popular. I wonder, what do you need from your kind of peer incumbents? What do you need to see them do that can increase that trust and support new candidates like you to say, hey, my party is getting it together. I'm going to be part of a party that's getting it together. And you can not only, trust me as a candidate, you can trust kind of this party as a whole more.
Yeah, it's a great question, Xander. I think most people, they don't really think about the Democratic Party, right? They think about leaders within the party. Do those leaders resonate with their values? I mean, you don't need to look any further than Donald Trump, right? I mean, Donald Trump essentially, ran a hostile takeover of the Republican Party because Republican primary voters, and obviously not just in the primary, but in the general election in 2016, gravitated towards him. And so he basically took over the entire Republican Party. Obviously, Miles, you've talked a little bit about your experience dealing with that. But I think about, how do we as a party start to rebuild trust in the Democratic Party? It's by electing leaders who people trust, and so for me, again, that's where leading by example, I think, is a really key part of that. And for me, it was really simple. We launched this campaign last June. One of the first questions that I got as a candidate was, would I vote for Chuck Schumer for leader? And I said straight out of the gate, absolutely not. I'm running for the U.S. Senate because I believe it's time for a new generation of leaders. Senator Schumer, on the other hand, is on the record saying that it's fine if our party writes off blue-collar voters and rural voters, because for every one of those voters we lose, we're going to make up 2 or more in the suburbs. And not only is that math not something that works in Iowa, and I don't even really know if it works that well in New York, that's not the Democratic Party that I want to belong to. We are the party that since the New Deal has fought for workers' rights and civil rights and women's rights. We believe the government can do good things to make people's lives better. That's the party that I belong to. That's the party that I want to help lead and try to rebuild that trust that we have lost. And you got to be candid about the failures of the past if you want to have any hope for the future.
Well, Zach, if you're worried about authenticity, which I don't think you are, my wife texts as we're sitting here and says, I'll be honest, you guys look like you could be a right-wing gun talk show, the 3 of you. So look.
It's funny you say that, Miles. There's actually, I'm not a big hunter. My friend Roxanne, who's running for governor, he's the hunter. But I did grow up shooting. I got the rifle, shooting, merit badge, shotgun merit, but I still shoot recreationally. Got my concealed carry permit, those kinds of things. But I will tell you, I think that being able to just talk with people in a way where you're kind of meeting them where they are, you talk about things that resonate in their lives. Doesn't matter, if you're at a Democratic, spaghetti supper, if you're talking to ironworkers, apprentices in Des Moines, like we did last year, you got to meet people where they are. You got to talk with them in a way that speaks to their experience and makes them feel heard and listened to. And, we haven't even really gotten into kind of how I got started in this whole kind of political and advocacy thing. But, my kind of quote unquote origin story, so to speak, was back in 2011. I was a sophomore at the University of Iowa. I was studying civil environmental engineering. I was going to go build, bridges. And I wound up finding myself in front of the Iowa State Legislature defending my family, because I grew up in a non-traditional family. I have 2 moms. And Iowa, as you may or may not know, is one of the first states in the country to recognize same-sex marriage. And Republicans were trying to reverse that state Supreme Court decision by amending our Constitution. And I went up and defended my family. Video of that speech was recorded by an intern with the flip cam. It went viral. And when that happened, I wound up traveling across Iowa, across the country, trying to fight for families like mine who needed a voice, needed a champion. And during that time, I was often, I think because I'm the tall, straight Eagle Scout, beard, whatever, I often got asked to go speak to those more skeptical or hostile type audiences. And what I learned from that experience was that when you show up, you bring some grace, some humility to that experience, and meet people where they are. You take their questions, seriously. You answer the questions that might be awkward or wildly inappropriate at times. People are often willing to meet you halfway, or sometimes a heck of a lot more than that, as long as you're willing to treat them like a real human being.
Yeah, I feel like people now can spot bullshit a mile away. I mean, that's why that's why our friend Aaron Parnas is like, he's kicking ass in the news media, because Aaron's like, I can strip away the pretense. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a t-shirt or a collared shirt or what I'm wearing. Like, I'm going to bring the news to you raw as it happens. We're going to talk about it like normal human beings. They want to see that. They don't want to see charlatans go get dressed up and sit there at a cable news channel and just like vomit the president's talking points onto the table in front of them. They know it. They see it. They know those people are full of shit, and they're tired of it. They feel like that's what got us into the situation that we are in. So I just commend you, my friend, for being unafraid to just go out there and say what you actually believe. I mean, Zach, the funny thing is you and I politically are in all kinds of different places. You're way further left than me. I'm way further right than you would speculate. And that doesn't matter. I mean, we're talking about fighting for the soul of our country right now. Yeah. And that's what's on the line. And again, my friend, I commend you for talking about that so directly.
I appreciate that. And again, when I was doing that advocacy work years ago, I was going to places where I was often, for sure, the most, quote unquote, left person in the room, whatever that really means, I guess. But I learned that there's so much more that we have in common, than makes us different. That was really reinforced for me when I ran for office. When I was first elected, my district was, I mentioned earlier, Coralville, which is just outside of Iowa City, more kind of progressive county. But I had 2 counties in my district, Cedar County and Muscatine County, both A lot of small towns, rural areas, very swingy, voted for Barack Obama in 2012, Donald Trump in 2016, and then voted for me in 2018. And the way that we did that was by showing up in person, building relationships. I knocked a ton of doors and took those conversations really seriously. And I think what I learned from four years of representing Cedar County, Muscatine County, was that even though the challenges that are facing a lot of Iowa small towns and rural communities are without doubt different than the challenges for those of us who live in town, the source of a lot of those challenges is actually maybe less different than people might realize. Xander, we go back to the conversation earlier about the consolidation in our economy, and whether that's consolidation in the ag economy, consolidation in healthcare. And I want to be very clear, by the way, I'm a free market guy. I was a small business owner, had some success early in my life. And so I believe in, the ability of the market to do good things when you have competition. And that's the problem that we see right now. And that is playing out whether you're living in a big city, a small town, a rural community, or you live out on a dirt road. We see that same problem playing out over and over and over and over. And by the way, Miles, to your point about the left-right split, that's not just a threat to, hardworking Iowa families trying to get through the day. I'd say that's a threat to national security, because when you talk about American competitiveness on the global stage, the stagnation that you see in innovation and competition because of what has happened right now in our economy, that's a real thing that I think people, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, can be concerned about.
Amen, my friend. Amen. 100%. Zach, before we let you go, I want to ask, where can people find you? And I think we've had it on the Chiron on the lower third of the screen.
The Mercedes has been looking it
down. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so you just go to zackwalls.com. So it's ZACHWAHLS. And Xander, I saw you pull up the Build the Barn section of our website. That comes from an old Sam Rayburn line about how any jackass can kick down a barn and it takes a carpenter to build one. It's kind of the unofficial motto of this campaign, because I think if you look at what's happening in our country right now, it's clear that we need carpenters more than ever. And I'd tell you that in Iowa, we know that carpenters do not build barns alone. It really does take a community coming together. It's what this campaign is all about.
Exactly. Zach, right? I'm gonna tell you. I mean, I hate for your wife to know this, but based on the comments in the chat, it sounds like there's some ladies out there who want to see you build a barn, like kind of, maybe
that's another fundraising strategy.
Maybe like a 72-hour video. Just slowly building a barn in the heat, and probably is going to help you raise money, man. I don't know.
This is why Miles can't be anyone's campaign manager.
Here's how I met my wife. So in 2011, the video of that speech of me testifying before the Iowa legislature, that goes viral. My wife at the time was writing for a feminist blog living out in New York City, and she happened to be on blog duty the week that video went viral. And she wrote up the video, and her headline she put on her article was "Marry Me, Zack Walls." No. Now we have a 2-year-old.
No way.
100% true. Now, I think she sometimes wishes that she had written, "Marry me, Chris Evans," or "Marry me, Jackson."
She knew she had that power.
Right? If she knew she had that power. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely been an incredible experience for us. And I would definitely say
she was Travis Kelce before Travis Kelce was like, I better go get Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I mean, look, fun fact, I did not play football with Travis Kelce, but George Kittle was a high school classmate of mine and actually chipped into the campaign when I was first running for the state Senate many years ago. Nice. I don't know what George is doing, and he's staying busy, obviously.
And you remind your wife of that every day. You're like, look at this amazing situation you got yourself into.
It is kind of impossible to escape. She's a romance novelist now. She writes like spicy romance novels. But now she's living in one. So there you go.
Okay. Well, I got mispitched on this segment. We should have had your wife on. I think we made a mistake. I think we meant to invite your wife onto the program to ask her all the real questions.
I'm sure she'd be happy to join you guys in the future. But I would definitely say to anyone watching, if you've been looking for a campaign to get excited about, a place where your dollars, frankly, get stretched really far. Iowa has some of the most affordable media markets in the country. So, $10 here goes as far as about $70 in Ohio or $100 in Texas. And so if you want to chip in, this is a great time to do it. We're counting down The days here, it's like 4 days, 7 hours, and 8 minutes or so until we close the books on this next big fundraising deadline. So if you're looking for a time to contribute, this is definitely the time to do it.
Well, also sounds like a sales pitch for moving to Iowa. So, a lot of people are moving to middle America states, I've seen in the headlines. Well, Zack Walls, we are thrilled to have you, my friend. If you are just tuning in, I'm going to sum it up for you. Real man running for office to displace real assholes in Washington. That's the whole story right there. You met him, Zack Walls.
You're rehired for the campaign manager. That's pretty good.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for all you're doing, man, and speaking truth to power out there. And we look forward to touching base.
I really look forward to it, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good one. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks. On brand the whole way through. From beginning to end.
On brand the whole way through. Well, look, I'm going to take Hannah's note there, Xander, which, again, what was that? I'll be honest, you guys look like you could be a right-wing gun talk show. We'll talk to Zack, depending on how things go with the campaign.
Hour. If you stick around for another half hour.
Yeah, you stick around. It may not be your cup of tea, but that's what's coming.
2A, all the A's. We support all of the amendments. That's what we're about.
All the A's. All the A's. Well, look, listen, this week, Xander, we've decided to end our news coverage with a brand new segment, because while Republicans, especially the MAGA brand that are trying to tear down our democracy, are trying to project strength, the reality is this week looked very different for them. And so we're going to talk about the MAGA losses of the week. The first is that CPAC delivered one of the most on-the-nose moments I think you'll see in the news this week. Mike Lindell, one of Donald Trump's loudest allies, especially when it came to stealing an election, was literally served with legal papers live on the air.
Into our country, most of them break a law within the first 3 months. Most of them, we're on TV here, please. We're on TV, please. We're on TV, please. Okay, we're on TV, please. We're on TV, please. Okay, we're on TV, please.
What are you serving him with?
We're on TV, please. We're on TV, please.
What are you serving him with?
I'm not accepting this.
What are you trying to serve him? Ma'am,
we're on TV, please.
Yes.
We're on TV, please. Okay.
There you go. He took it. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, Xander, I think someone needs to let him know that when you throw the papers, that actually doesn't make the lawsuit go away. Yeah, it doesn't make it go away.
Poor strategy. I tried to do that once with a parking ticket. It also didn't work.
Nope, they're still going to come at you for that one. Well, the next one we have is that it's clear that there's some cracks forming where MAGA Republicans least want to see them, and that's in Florida, where GOP sheriffs are now publicly pushing back on their own party's immigration crackdown. You heard that right, not Democratic sheriffs, Republican law enforcement, saying that the immigration policies are too broad and sweeping up people who, get this, aren't even criminals, and who are, in their words, quote, "we're hurting people who are not the target." Wow. That's not messaging spin, folks. That's the people enforcing the policies saying it's going too far. Republicans enforcing those policies. So anyway, that's a noteworthy one. But finally today, we have a subsegment of this segment that we think is going to become a regular, and we're glad you stuck around for it, because today we're going to present our inaugural Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award, S-O-L-E, Soulmate Award. Why? Why do we spell it that way? Well, you may have seen this month news stories about how Donald Trump regularly hands out his favorite shoes, a company called Florsheim out of Chicago. He hands out black leathered Oxford shoes to the people willing to abandon their principles and stay in his good graces. He's been gifting all over the place, to TV commentators, to White House aides, and often, according to news reports, the president guesses the size of their shoe. He guesses, which means they receive a shoe from the president that they feel pressure to wear, and it's the wrong fit. Yet cabinet members like Marco Rubio have reportedly been spotted walking around the United States Capitol in oversized shoes anyway, shoes that people speculate are indeed the ones that Donald Trump has given him, coerced him and other cabinet members and officials to wear. Apparently, they will do anything to please the president. And here at defiance.org, we think that deserves recognition. So the Soulmate Award that we've come up with goes to the officials and legislators and public figures who have most completely surrendered their oaths or their souls or both to become Donald Trump's most devoted followers. Because if the shoe fits, as they say, you wear it. And if it doesn't, well, you wear it anyway. That's what they do in Donald Trump's Washington. So this week, our inaugural Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award goes to someone who has been willing to say what the president wants, even if he doesn't always believe it. Someone who talks tough about Trump when Trump is out of power, makes snarky comments about him off camera, but when the cameras are rolling is clearly auditioning for a pair of those shoes that Donald Trump famously hands out to his loyalists. This week, the Soulmate Award goes to CNN's Scott Jennings, a man I've sat next to at CNN, a man who, when the cameras go off, will tell you what he thinks about Donald Trump, will make a joke at the president's expense, will agree about an egregious policy or an off-the-rails briefing. But when they come back on, a completely different man. Scott Jennings, the shoes, my friend, are in the mail. Xander, that's our award for this week. I don't know if you have anyone that you desperately want to get a pair of those shoes, but we are indeed going to be sending those to the award winners. So I believe that the pair in the mail for Scott Jennings is a size 6 Florsheim Oxford that will be showing up for him at CNN. We sent that to his office. We hope they will find him and give him those shoes. I know he wants them. And if the president hasn't given him a pair, damn it, Xander, he's earned it.
Hey, also, Marco, you idiot, you can buy your own pair in your size. You don't have to
wear the floppy clown shoes.
You can pretend you're wearing his shoes and buy your own shoes in your own size. Don't you have a fucking assistant? You're the Secretary of State. Have him go run down and get a pair in your size, you moron.
We joke about this stuff, but this is something that, Xander, you and I have just marveled the day this story dropped, because you really could not have fictionalized a more absurd story to symbolize the cravenness and the unyielding devotion that people have to following Donald Trump right off a cliff. They'll just do anything in Trump's Washington. And, you were the one that said, I think you were the one that pointed out to me, hey, look, Stalin's tunic was something that became popular. Mao had the Mao suit that still sold today. And everyone wore these.
I like the Saddam stash that everyone
the Saddam stash
had for a little while.
In those autocracies, the people wore the style the leader wanted them to because they were afraid either for their lives or their jobs. And the same thing is happening in America, but in the stupidest form. It's not even a Mao suit or a Stalin tunic or a cool Saddam stash. Yeah. Donald Trump's got a stupid pair of shoes that he really likes, and he wants all of his people to wear them. And there was this amazing quote. If people read our article about it, we linked to it this morning on defiance.news. But there was this amazing quote, and I think the Wall Street Journal, that staff are literally afraid not to wear them. They're afraid not to wear the shoes that the president is getting them, even if they have nicer shoes, shoes that fit, shoes they like. If they've been gifted a pair of these from Donald Trump, they feel like they've got to wear them around. How stupid is that? How stupid. This could have been in another timeline, kind of a funny story, a quirky story about a president who gives out shoes and people like them. Instead, it's a story about the fear and about the absolute cowardice that has taken over Washington, D.C. Complete cowardice pandemic in the Republican Party of people who wear these things even when they don't fit. So we're delighted to be giving out the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award, and this is the first of many.
It's worth mentioning also, while this is like clownish behavior, it also makes us very unsafe when advisors to the president are lackeys and not speaking truth to power and advising him based on their kind of best input or best knowledge, it makes us all in greater danger. I mean, I remember this case study I read once where Korean Airlines was crashing at like, I think it was like 5x or 10x the frequency. This was in a Gladwell book. They wrote about this, the frequency. They were crashing at much greater frequency. And it was because in Korean culture, the power distance between the co-pilot and the pilot was so great that the co-pilot was not advising the pilot even when they saw problems. And we've seen this in authoritarian regimes all over the place that crumble because no one can give advice to a leader that is increasingly untethered to reality in their decision-making. And so it is a like physical indicator that there is just a bad decision-making process and bad power distances at the top level in this country.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times have people listening heard that there are Republicans in Washington who say one thing in private about Donald Trump and say a different thing in public? This is an epidemic. This is out of control, and it's been happening for a decade. And this shit's not made up. It's real, you guys. I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in like this. The worst was on the House floor. Is, during Donald Trump's rise, you'd go down there and you'd see these members of Congress talk shit about him, say what a joke he was, how he would wreck the country. Same people who were going and auditioning for jobs in his cabinet. How pathetic is that? That you are just so in love with being in this one tribe that you're willing to take conscience and to sit on it. And when it starts to squeal, to take your hand and to muzzle it, and then to desperately reach for some duct tape and wrap it around your conscience's head until it's dead. That is what
That's what you're doing.
person done in the GOP. I understand that these guys are, they're scared about not getting to be in the club anymore. Let me just send a little message to them. You know what? If you keep your conscience alive, it's a lot more satisfying. You may have a different life. You may not get to go to the GOP barbecues at the White House anymore with the president. You may not get to do that. But you know what? You're going to have your fucking soul still. And that's going to feel pretty good. And
turns out partying with the president's a bad fucking idea anyways, as we've learned from the Epstein files. You don't want to be at his parties. They're terrible parties.
The people you want to respect you will still respect you.
Yeah.
And the people that you didn't realize you needed out of your life and your future, it was a really magical way to get rid of them. I can attest. It's had a very cleansing effect on my life and my world to break away from that deeply toxic tribe that is founded on a lie, that they actually like this man and believe in them. Some of them do. And I will tell you, Xander, when I spend time with those actual true believers, I don't have any animus towards them. I'll try to persuade them. I may disagree with them, but I go on shows, I go speak at events where mega MAGA people are who I respect. I respect because they're coming from a genuine place. What I don't respect is these cowards who know better, these cowards who see and understand how the president is dismantling democracy, who will call him an authoritarian behind his back and then go praise him with the courage of an infomercial after that. That's not okay. Those are the people that have put this country in danger. Those are the charlatans to whom we owe the terror of this moment. They were also the people who will walk their way out of Washington in Donald Trump's clown shoes in total shame when this is all over. Anyway.
Let's go make that walk happen. I'm excited to make that walk happen.
Let's go make that. I don't want it to be a 5K. I want it to be an ultra marathon. We're going to end today with the segment we always end with, which is who is joining the Defiance. And today's who is joining the Defiance is a little personal for the Defiance team because both Xander and I are the parents of little people who have a world of their own outside of being the children of very politically active parents. Now, at some point in time, Xander, household conversations tend to spill into their very safeguarded little inside worlds, which leaves us with no choice. Do we encourage them to talk about politics or do we leave it out of the sandbox? Well, I think in former administrations, that may have been the case. But now parents are choosing to bridge the gap. Take a look.
Remember, when you go to school, let's not talk too much about the Donald Trump of it all. All right. I love you, Buggy.
No, don't get mad.
When you talk about Donald Trump, yeah, maybe we just don't talk about him to your friends yet.
Why do they get confused?
Well, their mommy and daddy might not talk about him as much, but you know what? Honestly, talk about it. When I was in first grade, I got in trouble for telling people that men can marry men and women can marry women, and that was 26 years ago. Well, I'm just saying, Mommy got in trouble for talking about queer rights in first grade, so I suppose when we talk about Donald Trump, this is fascinating being a parent. The reason that Donald Trump is ugly is because of what's inside, and what's outside for him happens to be unappealing as well. Just because someone's beautiful doesn't mean they're not a bad guy. And just because someone doesn't look what you would think or what society deems as beautiful, they could be the best person you've ever known. And appearance really has nothing to do with it. You know, Donald Trump just happens to be ugly.
Well, she said it. She said it, Xander. Thankfully, I haven't had to have that conversation yet. I haven't had to have that conversation yet.
It is so interesting raising kids in this era, though, right? Like there was almost I remember watching Boy Meets World, and they had, was it Mr. Feeney, Miles?
Mr. Feeney.
There was no matter what you were watching in that era, there was kind of like this shared moral responsibility, like the entertainment industry and what had to like integrate these lessons on how to be a person that, like, you know, when you're raising a kid in this era, it's totally lost. Whether it's like short form content that's just supposed to, it's only rewarded by spiking your dopamines, or they look at who leadership is and what they're saying. I mean, it's so depressing to think about it. Luckily, our kids are a little too small right now to kind of be able to look at Donald Trump in that sense. But you can't trust kind of like broader culture to try to craft a well-rounded human being. And so it is an immense responsibility in so many ways to raise these kids with these lessons. So it's really beautiful hearing that from
I mean, you know, it's one of the things that I talk to my wife about is, for better or for worse, there's an entire generation of millennials that were raised only on the morality of the Harry Potter books, because we've seen, you know, that was right in the advent of, you know, video games and social media, and, you know, whatever your moral anchor is, you know, Christianity, Islam, philosophy, something else, a lot of those anchors disappeared. And so again, for a whole generation, the Harry Potter books are relatively wholesome compared to anything else out there, but like, that's it. Like, you know, we've got a whole generation that's like the most moral thing they were unified by was a series of books. And now I can't say what it is. I can't say that there's some viral TikTok trend that's got the essence of morality in it. And I think the onus is on parents more than any other generation in memory to teach their children about right and wrong. There aren't other systems that they're obviously getting it from right now in this short form culture, especially in a polity that's been corrupted by a would-be despot. So a lot of responsibility.
Totally. It's definitely a journey being a father, you know, in this era, being a parent in this era, for sure.
Let's take a couple questions from Defiance.org members, my friend, before we let them go enjoy their weekends. Xander, I'm going to throw one at you from Claire, who says, Who's paying for the shoes? Paying for the shoes? Probably the taxpayers. I think Donald Trump is paying for the shoes.
As we learned from Florsheim's lawsuit with the U.S. government over the tariffs, he's not buying enough shoes to make up for their.
Please tell people about that, Xander. If people don't know, that's a fascinating twist to this whole story.
So I don't know, was it a month ago, Neil Katyal and his team led a case at the Supreme Court where it ultimately ruled that the tariffs were illegal. Trump did not have the right to impose tariffs unilaterally. And one of the kind of outcomes of that decision, or happenings of that decision, is now corporations are suing the U.S. government because of money they lost due to increased tariffs, or money they spent due to increased tariffs. And one of those companies is Florsheim, the makers of these shoes that Trump is handing out. So Florsheim is suing the Trump government right now due to Trump's tariffs while Trump buys those shoes. But unless he buys, I don't know, tens of thousands of pairs, he's not making up for their loss. And there's kind of a follow-on, argument to be had, which is a lot of those companies ultimately did not lose money. They passed on those tariffs onto us, the customers, the consumers, and whatnot. And so there's a philosophical conversation on the backs of those lawsuits, which says really who was robbed by these tariffs and who is owed. That I'd love to dive into another day.
For sure. And we've got another question about the cost of shoes. Mira asks, are we sending those shoes to the award winners of the Donald J. Trump Soulmate Award that we will start giving out maybe weekly, maybe monthly? We haven't decided. Well, Mira, that question is going to go to you all. I will say in the case of our award winner this week, Scott Jennings, yes, the shoes are going to him. Now, I am personally paying for those shoes and I'm sending those. But if Defiance.org members are excited about awarding this every week, then we can make it a regular thing where the club provides that award. We'll double check with the lawyers that we can be the ones to supply that award. But I suspect the answer is yes. So that's up to you all. But maybe perhaps, Xander, we'll talk about that in our monthly member meeting next week.
Yeah, it's a good question for next week.
You can rest assured that, yes, this week's shoes are going to their intended recipient, size 6. There you have it. Ernie Rosado says, where in the world is VP J.D. Vance? He's disappeared as the White House is crumbling and falling down in rubble, all about its inmates. Xander, where is J.D. Vance? Where do you think he's going? Why do you think he's not more vocal
to get in bed with a freaking liar. It's tough to do that, man. He ran on MAGA. He believed parts of it. He's a true, I think, nationalist in that sense, right? He has kind of scary, almost white nationalism narratives that he sometimes touts. But, he ran on No More Forever Wars. He ran on a lot of the kind of the parts of MAGA that were about isolationism and nationalism. And now he's the vice president to a administration that is creating wars and conflicts all over the world, stealing presidents from Venezuela, bombing Iran, starving Cuba, spending a lot of money harming the rest of the world and not doing at all what he said. So I imagine he's hiding under his desk somewhere, trying to dodge blame for this while he plans on mitigating damage for his 2028 campaign. That's all projection. I don't know if that's true, but
well, Xander, the final one we have is from the incredible Igor in our community, who's got a public service announcement, which is this. Igor's public service announcement is that anyone who wants cards to hand out tomorrow at a No Kings rally, Igor has taken the posters that we put up at defiance.org/No Kings and made up a 4-up card with full-size QR codes in an easy print PDF format. Igor, you rock. Igor is going to put that link in the comments of this video when it posts. So when this video posts, which it should post, producer Mercedes, usually like within 15, 20 minutes after the episode, go take a look. Igor's going to add that into the comments. Thank you, Igor. So if you've got a printer, or you want to send that to a FedEx, folks, go ahead and grab that PDF file from Igor and print it out. We have posters that we have made at the protest tomorrow. We remind you, go to nokings.org to find your local protest if you have not, all across America. Again, folks, this is shaping up to be the biggest nationwide protest in the history of this country. In almost 250 years, you're going to want to be a part of it. But more than that, as we urged you all this week, bring people to the No King rallies. Bring someone else, invite more folks, bring them into the event. And I will just say, if you're a defiance.org member, you have helped mobilize people this week. Let me remind you, if you're a defiance.org member, you helped mobilize people to the U.S. Capitol to go talk to their members of Congress, to tell them to back off of this war. We're already seeing an impact. We're seeing Republican members of Congress even get nervous about the president's funding request, get nervous about a ground invasion. So thank you for helping to mobilize folks going into the Capitol this week. And you also today, if you didn't see it, defiance.org members, we helped sponsor an event right in front of the Kennedy Center. We helped sponsor an event with award-winning actress Jane Fonda, musician Maggie Rogers, and so many others to protest Donald Trump's torch that he's taken to the First Amendment, and also his defacement of federal buildings like the Kennedy Center, where he has added his name above John F. Kennedy. That was an extraordinary event. You can feel free to go to our members' site on Substack, defiance.news, if you want to watch the video. I think, Xander, that video is now live. I'll check afterwards, but the video of our 2 p.m. coffee, we included about half of that program, and you can watch it there. That was sponsored by the Committee for the First Amendment, and we were thrilled to be able to chip in and help out with that. So Defiance members, you've already had a big week. You've already done a lot to fight for the First Amendment, and tomorrow is going to be the exclamation point. Xander, do you have your signs ready? I got to go pick mine up at a FedEx right after this. It's literally the next place. Yeah. Before it closes, I think the FedEx closes in 40 minutes. And so like I got to race there.
This is the benefit of West Coast hours. They're open for me. I'm gonna swing by.
Naturally. Well, listen, friends, we're so grateful for the defiance.org community. Thank you for all you've done. This has been a big week. Tomorrow should be a joyous day of solidarity and defiance in this country. We'll see you again Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. We're going to see photos and recaps of No King's Day. In the meantime, and especially tomorrow, friends, stay loud, stay brave, and stay together.
See ya.